Always special to be together to bring in Shabbat. And it's hard to believe as we've announced the coming of Nisan tomorrow, and this is Shabbat HaChodesh, that Pesach is 2 weeks away. I hope that you're getting ready. And always we here as clergy are here for any Pesach questions. Usually our email boxes and phones are full. So whatever questions you have, please send. And just a note before I start my remarks, I mentioned this at the Men's Club Lunch and Learn, or we mentioned it together, that when Passover starts Saturday night, the order for many things, starting with the fast of the firstborn and the sale of the chametz and getting rid of your chametz and the search, and the burning, and even Saturday night, first Seder, the order is a little bit different because of Shabbat being there in the middle. And we're going to be sending an email out probably on Monday with all the different options that you can follow and to help flow you through those last days leading up to Pesach. So that's for another day, but just wanted you to know we'll be sending some guidance and some resources so that you have a very special Pesach and, of course, a kosher Pesach. So we come to a point in our Torah reading where in the book of Exodus, as we've just concluded and said, Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek, that we are strengthened together, we have gone from beginning as slaves to being freed, to coming to Mount Sinai and meeting God at the revelation and receiving the 10 Commandments. And we have been completing, or our ancestors have been completing, a 5-week long construction project. Now, I don't know about you, most construction projects take more than 5 weeks now. But the Israelites, in the building of the Mishkan, of the holy portable sanctuary, the tabernacle, took entire 5 parshas in our Torah. And you probably know that the Torah is very focused. The Torah never minces words. No one doesn't repeat things unless there's something to learn from it. So this morning I'd like to share a text study together where we look at the closing sections of the construction of the Mishkan and try to understand it. The first we'll do together, and then the second part of the text study, I'm going to have you try and find someone near you to work on. So if you can see, if you have that, insert the special handout that is inside your Shabbat handout. I want to go through the first 2 texts together. So you can see on the top, Exodus 39, thus was completed all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, the Mishkan. The Israelites did so. Just as God had commanded Moses, so they did. Just as God had commanded Moses, so the Israelites had done all the work. And when Moses saw that they had performed all the work as God had commanded, so they had done, Moses blessed them. Now this is eerily familiar to another portion that we read in our Torah, and that is right below it. And that is the creation story. And we're going to talk in a few minutes about why the construction and completion of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, of God's home within our world, is so similar to the listing of the creation of the world in Genesis, in Bereshit. So just to read from you, and I'm actually going to start a verse before, not in what's here, the second source in your handout, but this is Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, which is the last verse of Genesis. And God saw all that God had made and found it very good. The heaven and the earth were completed and all their array. On the 7th day, God finished the work that had been undertaken. God ceased on the 7th day from doing any of the work. God blessed the 7th day, declaring it holy, having ceased on it from all the work of creation that God had done. So, do you see any similarities here? Is anything repeated between the 2 parshas? Throw it out. What do you see? What? Creation. Are there any specific words that appear in both Exodus and also in Genesis? Completed, vayichal or vatechal. Yeah? What? Had done, asu, right? Perhaps just as was commanded, right? And just as finished the work that had been undertaken. There's a lot of had been done here. Any other repeated words? Or if you're a Hebrew speaker, you can look in the Hebrew. Melacha. Melacha is work. Melachto, right? This word work, completing work, appears in both sections multiple times. Yeah? Moses blesses and God blesses. Okay, good. Any other things that are similar here? Shabbat. What's similar? How's that similar to the top section? Right, the teaching of Shabbat is before the Mishkan. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, the work has been completed is repeated twice in both sections. And the verse that I read to you, but is not in here, it says, and God saw. That's in Genesis. And if you look, verse 43 in the top, and Moses saw. There's also a repeat of the word hine, which is, again, in the top one. It's not in what's printed in the bottom one, but it's the same. And I'll just tell you a couple more. Number one is, not necessarily here, but in the entire section of the building of the Mishkan, there are 7 times where God says Vayidaber or Vayomer in all those 5 parshiot that conclude. So 7 times God speaks and commands us about the building of the Mishkan. And if you know in the story of creation, let there be light, right? Each day of creation, God speaks, and it comes to be. So there's that repetition. Another one is that phrase, just as the Lord commanded, appears 7 times in the closing portions of Exodus. And the phrase, and God saw that it was good, appears 7 times, and those seem to be complementary. The last one is the craftsman, the master craftsman of the Mishkan. Anyone know who that was? Bezalel, right? If you go to Israel now, Bezalel is the arts academy, named for the biblical Torah Bezalel, who was the master craftsman. And if you read about the designation of Bezalel in our portions, there it says Bezalel was endowed with divine spirit, Ruach Elohim. And that is the beginning of the story of how Bezalel oversaw the construction, perhaps was the architect or project manager or whatever you want to call it, but he did it with divine inspiration or divine spirit. And if you know, Genesis 1, verse 2 says, Ruach Elohim. That same phrase is used that before actually anything is created in the world, the Spirit of God hovers over the waters. So that same phrase is used. So I hope I showed you that there are fair number of parallels here between the creation and the construction of the holy space for God and the centerpiece of our Jewish people and the creation of the world. So I wrote a couple discussion questions here that I need your help with. Why? Why is the building of the Mishkan use similar language to the creation of the creation story in Genesis? And what does that teach us about the tabernacle, God's house within our world? Why do you think? And Rabbi Jacobs here has a microphone so that everyone can hear. So if you want to share, why? Why are these similar? You're going to make him go to the furthest spot in the room. Yeah. Well, we also have people that are online, so we want them to hear. Yes.
So,
David, yes.
This thought just came into my head, and it may not be valid at all, but I'll throw it out there anyway for purpose of discussion. But when God creates, among other things, God is making a home for us. And when we are creating, in turn, we're making a symbolic home here on earth for God.
Beautiful. We're actually going to see that in the Chavruta session. It's exactly what Rabbi Shai Held talks about. Great. Any other comments? If you want to just say your name too? Not everybody knows everybody here.
My name is Nancy.
Nancy, yes.
The laws of Shabbat have to do a lot with the building of the Mishkan because so many of the things that you're not allowed to do are related directly to what they weren't allowed to do while building the Mishkan. So
That's great. So what we specifically looked at in the Genesis story, the creation story, is the law, seventh day, Shabbat, is really the focus and the conclusion, just like the construction of the Mishkan. We're looking at the conclusion, and as Nancy rightly said, there are 39 things biblically forbidden for 39 acts that we can't do on Shabbat. Those are actually called the Melachot, which is another connection here. And all of those 39 actions can be tied to the construction project of the building of the Mishkan. Ivan? Yeah. Thanks, Rabbi Jacobs.
The building of the tabernacle gives a purpose to the Israelites. In other words, it now becomes a partnership. It's symbolic of a partnership with God.
We're going to get there also. Beautiful. So there's an idea of partnership. God made the world for us, right? And how do we partner in our lives with God? The rabbis say that we are supposed to be shutafot, that God created us for a grander purpose, and that is to be God's partner. And I actually named my Torah study as the blessing of the work of our hands, and we're going to talk about perhaps that this partnership is that we can create in this world just as God created the world, and we'll look at that. Yeah, Bill, and then that'll be our last comment.
Yeah, hi. Not the right words here, but in Bereshit, we know God created us in His image, and we're finally at a point in our development that, in a way, with the Mishkan, we are creating God as we need God to be, which is different than being told how to do it. So there's a lot. That's a shorthand way of saying it. But in a way, we've created the God that we can now bring through the centuries in worship.
It's interesting because a second construction project happens depending if you understand the chronology of the Torah. Whether you say it actually, if the Torah actually happened in the exact order that it happened, the building of the golden calf actually happens in the middle section of the building of the Mishkan. So, then my question to you would be, like, which construction, is there a right way to build something and is there a wrong way to build something? Are there any builders here? Is there a right way to build something and a wrong way to build something? Yeah, one that will last forever and one that won't. Just a note, some rabbis, like Ibn Ezra, as a classic commentator, says that the Torah actually is not in the exact order. The order that we have, that it was written as a way to teach us something, and it isn't necessarily the chronological order. So we're going to look later at this. So I have a second question, which is the second pair of questions. Okay, it says, God blessed, right, what's the exact? God blessed the seventh day. And then it said, Moses blessed them. It doesn't actually say what the bracha is, right? It doesn't say in the Torah, what did God say when God blessed the seventh day? And it doesn't say, what did Moses say when Moses blessed? So this is perhaps where I'm going to let you turn to someone near you, or if you're far away, maybe move closer. Just spend 2 or 3 minutes. What do you think God blessed? And what do you think Moses blessed? What are the actual words? When we say a blessing, we bless our kids, there's a word we say. When we bless the challah, there are words that we say, right? This isn't just an idea, I bless. When we pray for someone who's sick, there are words that we say. So what is that? What are the words that Moses and God said? Make a friend if there isn't someone near you. Introduce yourself. What do you think? What do you think? What did they say? For both of them? I will give you 10 more seconds. So we'll start with what did God bless in Genesis? Any ideas, any thoughts? What was God saying? Any ideas? Anyone want to share? Sylvia, you want to down the aisle?
So first, God blesses every day, says it's very good.
Yes.
But then it's also at the end, what we say in the Kiddush for Shabbat, God blesses the second day, v'yikadshehu, and makes it holy.
Mm-hmm.
So he makes a certain piece of time holy and also sees his acts as very good. Mm-hmm. So what we were saying here about, I don't know if we should jump to what is here about when Moses blesses them.
Yeah.
Is he making the people holy? Is he making the Mishkan holy? Because if you see the parallel, I would see it there.
Beautiful. Yeah. Now, just to answer, to give a response to that, if you look in the Hebrew, the second Hebrew here, that's Genesis, it does say, V'yovarech Elohim et yom hashvi v'kidesh oto. Right? So God blessed it and declared it holy. Good. But that's not above. Moses only blesses. Moses doesn't declare holy. So it's an interesting distinction. Yeah. Great. Other thoughts? What do you think? I mean, what's the blessing? Yeah, Larry? Hold on. Rabbi Josh is coming.
I don't know the blessing, but you asked what did Moses say, and he said, "Good job."
Good job. So a repetition. The other, who thought it was good job? Oh, we got a lot of good jobs here, which is almost like taking God's words. When God says, "V'hinei tov" or "tov ma'od" at the end of the sixth day.
You followed my directions well.
Yeah, you done good.
As opposed to with the golden calf, we didn't follow.
Yeah, you didn't follow any directions. Yeah.
And isn't it so that we wouldn't have needed the Mishkan if not for the golden calf? That's
an interesting question. Yeah, was the Mishkan necessary? There's another question like, where do they have the resources? Where do they have all the gold if they use it up on the golden calf? And where do they even get it when they were slaves? That's for another story. Yeah, so is this just like Moses giving a report card and A+? Yeah, other thoughts? Yeah, Hetty. Oh, Rabbi Jacob's Hetty over here, sorry.
When they're going on a trip, we bless people at the beginning. You know, there's a blessing at a Brit Milah. You're blessing people as they start their journey. So yes, what you've built is good. Now I'm blessing you to go forth and to utilize those skills and other things and make good of what you've done.
Beautiful. That's actually Rabbi Jacobs and Nancy and I were talking, and that's what Rabbi Jacobs said. I don't want to paraphrase. Do you want to share what you said, Rabbi Jacobs? Which base is similar to Hetty?
Yeah, just that when you create something, usually you have an intention in mind. So sort of blessing it that intention come to fruition. Although it's contrasting it to sort of having children where you sort of create something without knowing what it'll become. So you don't have a specific, intention necessarily. You just hope that things go well.
Hopefully those first 18 years, though, you can work on that. Or however long they're still in the house. One or two more things. Anyone know? And either God or Moses, one or two, and then we actually have sources that we're going to look at. The rabbis did actually, of course, debate what God said and what Moses said.
The Zimmermans next to me said that God blessed time and Moses was blessing space.
Oh, God bless. We're gonna get there. Interesting. God blesses time, the seventh day, and Moses blesses the space, the tabernacle. Okay.
And I'm going to say that he was also blessing the people because what he blessed them with was the priestly blessing.
The priestly blessing comes much later in the Torah, in Numbers, right? Yevarechecha Hashem v'yishmerak, considered the oldest prayer. What? He was a prophet. He already knew it. Well, I will actually say something else. At this moment in the Torah, Kohens don't exist yet. Right? Moses actually installs Aaron right after this. When the construction project is done and Aaron is ready to step up to serve, to be the high priest at the tabernacle, Moses invests him, commissions him, gives him the job to be the Kohen Gadol. So actually the rabbis believe that Moses was the first Kohen. So at this moment, Moses is the Kohen because he is the leader of everything, spiritual, religious, military, teacher. Moses is everything at this moment. So maybe the priestly blessing is even more ancient than when it appears in Numbers, and maybe he blessed them with the priestly blessing. So let's look at what the rabbis say. If you have the sheet, I want to start with God, actually, which is the back sheet. You can see I only brought you 6 commentaries of what rabbis say. I'm going to just run through them quickly. You can read them later. These are the 6, and you can see this spans like 900 years of what the rabbis think God said when God blessed Shabbat. Rashi, the first who is our most classic Torah commentator, said that actually at this moment God decided that God would bring the manna 2,000 years later after creation happened, that we would be wandering in the desert and that we wouldn't gather manna on Shabbat, because that's against one of the 39 rules that you're not allowed to do, and that God would provide a double portion on Friday so we wouldn't have to break Shabbos to collect the manna. Are you sold? Is that the blessing? Okay. Ibn Ezra says that you're blessed with an increase in well-being, right? On Shabbat, we feel better. On Shabbat, our body's blessed with a sense of renewal, perhaps even reproductive strength through renewal, and our soul has an increase of intellectual and reasoning capability just on Shabbos. Maybe? Okay. Sforno from Italy says, this is not actually that God blessed the first Shabbat and only the first Shabbat that ever happened in the world, but God blesses every single Shabbat, even today. And what's that blessing? That we get a neshama yetera. That every Shabbat we receive an extra soul, an extra uplift. We are sort of elevated with the coming of Shabbat to bask in Or HaChaim, the light of life. What do you think about that? Do you ever feel a little bit more uplifted when Shabbos happens? The rabbis say that's neshama yetera. Or HaChaim says that we get abundance. On Shabbat, there's a sense of abundance as opposed to the rest of the week, right? One might have expected the blessing to be purely spiritual nature, which we talked before about this extra soul, but Or HaChaim actually says that it's a physical abundance, that our tables are full, right? Have you ever had a full Shabbos table and eat a lot? Right? This is a blessing of a physical nature. His second comment is really interesting, which is that the world, God created the world in 6 days, but if there wasn't Shabbos, the world would have sort of collapsed. That the blessing was that every week you'll have Shabbos to endure the world, to recharge the batteries of the world. That's what he said. I should look at the commentary because I don't know if batteries existed in 18th century Morocco, but he says the universe was placed on a more permanent basis, enabled to renew its batteries by the infusion of the soul of Shabbat every week. And that is the blessing that God made. What do you think? Are you sold? Do you like that idea? Okay, 2 more. Radak says that there's an additional good, which is that we are afforded the opportunity to quietly and unhurriedly study Torah. That's the blessing of Shabbos. That's what God blessed all the way back more than 5,000 years ago, that we could sit and study it together. And the last one Rambam gives 2. One is in the name of Sadia Gaon that says that it's those who observe Shabbat are blessed, that God actually blesses us. all the way back from the first week of creation. When God blesses Shabbat, God blesses those who keep Shabbat. And Rambam lastly says that Shabbat is the foundation of blessings, and the blessing of Shabbat, again, sort of keeps the world going. What do you think? Any of those resonate with you? Some of them resonate with you? I'm going to let you think about it because we have some more to study. Let's look at what Moses blessed. If you turn the page back, we're on page 3. The rabbis give 2 specific blessings that Moses said. Both appear in other places in the Tanakh, in the Bible. The first, which is from Rashi, which the source is from the Sifra or Numbers Rabbah, which is the Midrash, that Moses blesses them. We'll say them as the people. May it be the will of God that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, rest upon the work of your hands. That you created this home for God, and that God will fill it. That God's Spirit, God will bring God's self into this home. And it's based on a verse from Tehillim, from the book of Psalms, and the full psalm is below. We say it every Shabbat. We say Tfilah LeMoshe Ish Elohim, a prayer of Moses, a psalm that Moses wrote or composed, and it's the last verse. Vayhi Noam Adonai Eloheinu Aleinu Maseh Yedenu Konaneu Konana Aleinu Maseh Yedenu Konaneu. May the favor of the Lord be upon us, and let the work of our hands prosper. What do you think about that? Is that a beautiful blessing that Moses said? Let the work of our hands prosper. Is that pretty good? Do we want that? May the work of our hands prosper. I thought it's beautiful. Now I'm going to give you the other prayer that the rabbis say. The rabbis say that Moses' prayer was this verse from Deuteronomy 1:11. Adonai Elohei Avotechem Yosef Alechem Kachem Elef Pa'amim V'yavarech Etchem Ka'asher Diber Lachem. May God, the God of our ancestors, increase your numbers 1,000-fold and bless you as promised. Nice, but I'm not sure why that necessarily relates specifically to the creation and construction of a sacred building. So, we go quick, or we're late. Just to show you, because we spent a lot of time here, there are 2 sources. The first is Abraham Joshua Heschel. We're on page 2, called The Sabbath. Classic work, recommended. It's incredible, from the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. I just want to look at the first 2 paragraphs with you. Unlike the space-minded man, to whom time is unvaried, iterative, homogeneous, to whom all hours are alike, qualityless, empty shells, the Bible senses the diversified character of time. No 2 hours are alike. Every hour is unique, the only one given at the moment, exclusive and endlessly precious. Judaism teaches us to be attached to holiness in time, to be attached to sacred events, to learn how to consecrate sanctuaries that emerge from the magnificent stream of a year. The Sabbaths are our great cathedrals. And then jumping down to the 4th paragraph, the meaning of Shabbat, it's to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live under the tyranny of things of space. On the Sabbath, we try to become attuned to holiness in time. Okay? Someone said before, right? God blessed time, we blessed space. This Shabbat is Shabbat HaChodesh, when we bless time, when we mark the moments leading up to Pesach, to our moment of freedom that gets replayed every single year, because we are obligated to see ourselves as being freed from Egypt and the obligations that comes from that. And just to close, I don't think we have time to discuss, but Rabbi Shai held in his Heart of the Torah essays on the weekly Torah portion on the connection between the creation of the world and the tabernacle says, the Mishkan, like the world, is a perfect realization of God's plans, except that in reality, the world as we find it falls short of God's hopes and expectations. In a world overrun by chaos, the Mishkan is intended to serve as one place in which everything can unfold according to the divine plan, just as the Lord commanded. Amid all the world's brokenness, there's at least one place in which God is really present. It's as if God says to Moses and the Jewish people, I made you a place to live, now you make one for me, as we said before. Judaism could never, though, rest content with one small pocket of order and goodness in the world. It's supposed to remind us that the world is intended to be a very large tabernacle. The challenge for us is to transform the idea that the world is a temple, a home for God's presence, into a tangible reality and a life's project. So I'll leave you with the discussion questions that we won't have time to process, but maybe over Kiddush. Which is harder to build, a sanctuary in time or a sacred building? What do you think? Just let's do a show of hands. Is it harder to build a sanctuary in time or a sanctuary like this, like a sanctuary, a sacred space? So if you think it's harder to build a sanctuary in time, raise your hands. All right, that's a lot of us. And how about a physical sacred building? All right, a lot more sanctuaries and times. We'll have to talk about why and why that is for another day. Can either be completed? Can either be completed, right? It's an interesting question, right? Right? The Torah says both were completed. That was that word, v'techal, vayechal, they were completed. But can we ever actually complete it? By the way, you might know, Zecher LeMikdash, because the temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago and still hasn't been rebuilt, even in our own homes, you're actually not supposed to finish any building project. You're supposed to leave a part of your house unfinished. Not just because it's hard to, or there's always something more to do, but it's supposed to remind us that our work is never done, but there's that idea that we can't desist from the work, right? Even though it's really long and arduous and we don't know if we're going to finish, it doesn't mean we shouldn't start it. And the last question to think about, how can we live our lives in a way that makes space for God? Is this solely through Jewish ritual or also in the way we carry ourselves in the world? How can we make the world more into a temple? And that's Rabbi Shai's held, and that's perhaps this connection between the creation of the world and the construction of the Beit HaMikdash. Dayenu, which of course is one of our favorite Passover songs that we'll be singing in 2 weeks, maybe banging on the table. If you play tambourines at your Seder, maybe you're playing it with a tambourine or something else. The last line of Dayenu is this, Ilu hichnisu le'eretz Yisrael, v'lo bana lanu et bait habechira Dayenu. It would have been enough, God, if you brought us into Eretz Yisrael, the land of Egypt, and not built the chosen home, Dayenu. Is that really so? Don't we have a sacred building project? Here we say, would have been enough if you just brought us to Israel and not built a home for God in this world. So I want to challenge Dayenu, which of course is our favorite song, right? How do we make a home for God in this world? Because I think that's one of our biggest challenges, opportunities, and obligations. Shabbat Shalom.